Absolutely not, Ghislaine Maxwell. That's what the United States House of Representatives is saying to her series of demands, including her demand that she be given immunity in order to testify before Congress pursuant to a validly issued subpoena calling for her deposition at the Tallahassee prison on August 11th. After being granted immunity by Donald Trump's Department of Justice in her meeting last week with Todd Blanche, the number 2 at the DOJ, and Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney, Ghislaine Maxwell was feeling emboldened. Her lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, left feeling that he had a productive meeting with the Trump regime. They gave her that queen for a day immunity status, proffer immunity status, so that everything that she said in that room, she couldn't be prosecuted for based on the statements made there. I mean, arguably, if the DOJ finds independent information, they could, but she's pretty insulated based on what she said at those meetings. So she left and she's like, look, Trump's dangling pardons in front of me with leaders from Europe and in Scotland. And look, Congress, you've subpoenaed me to testify on August 11th. You're going to do it on my terms, Congress. You hear? And then Congress just said, no, we're not. We're not doing it on your terms. We're the House of Representatives. We're not giving you immunity. I just did a video before about her demands, and I predicted this all, that she was going to try. I said she was either not going to testify before Congress or she was going to just try to blow it up. And she's pretending to be cooperative. So her lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, sent a letter to James Comer, who chairs the House Oversight Committee. And even Republicans like James Comer right now are kind of quartered into being like, we got to get her deposition. The American people ain't buying what Trump's selling on this. And the Democrats made some maneuvers before MAGA Mike was able to recess Congress to get that deposition of Ghislaine Maxwell. Hat tip to the Dems for being able to do that. So Ghislaine Maxwell is like, and you probably saw this in my prior video, go and watch that. Here are my conditions. You do my conditions, Congress, or I don't sit for a deposition. Huh? You're a convicted sex trafficker. What are you talking about? Go away. She goes, I want 1, a grant of formal immunity. 2, the interview will happen where I want it to happen. I will not do it at the Tallahassee Correctional Facility where I'm serving my sentence. 3, I want all of my questions in advance to prepare adequately for any deposition and to ensure the accuracy and fairness. She says, I want all questions in advances, no surprises at all. Written questions only. I will answer before I arrive, or I will read my responses when I get there. And finally, the interview would be scheduled only after a resolution of the Supreme Court on her petition for certiorari, her appeal to the Supreme Court that I've been covering here on the MeidasTouch network that she just filed, and her forthcoming habeas petition. Forthcoming meaning she hasn't filed it yet. She will be filing it in the Southern District of New York, and you could be damn sure some of the arguments she's going to be making is that according to the President of the United States, the entire Epstein files are a hoax, and that according to the President of the United States, Maureen Comey, the former lead prosecutor, is corrupted by the fact that her dad, according to Trump, was the one who created the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, and she's going to say, I never got that information when I was being criminally prosecuted. Apparently, the president's saying the FBI and the DOJ framed me because the former head of the FBI was running a hoax on the FBI files. And whether you believe Donald Trump or don't believe Donald Trump, I deserve a new trial because that's new data that I should have. But here's the statement that was just issued from the House of Representatives regarding the subpoena that was issued. They said the following, quote, the Oversight Committee will respond to Ms. Maxwell's attorney soon, but it will not consider granting congressional immunity for her testimony. You see, Trump regime, it's as simple as that, okay? You don't give immunity to people once they're convicted of sex trafficking, serving 20-year sentences where your DOJ says the person is a liar and unreliable and has shown no remorse and especially where it's not for the public benefit. Nobody's asked for this Ghislaine Maxwell meeting. We've asked for the files, the 300 gigabytes currently in the DOJ and FBI's custody and control. That's what we're asking for and looking for here. But what might be in those files, one may ask? Well, we had Michael Wolff on Legal AF, our sister channel, and here's what Michael Wolff, a biographer for Donald Trump and a possible biographer for Epstein, had to say. Here, play this clip.
But at any rate, at one point after Trump had been elected, I was sitting talking to Epstein, and he said, "Wait a minute, I got to show you something." And then he went into his safe, and he came out with photographs. They were Polaroids, I think, and he he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of took place. And I remember very vividly 3 of them. There are 2 in which Trump is, the girls, topless girls, are sitting on Trump's lap. And then a 3rd in which he has a stain on the front of his pants. And the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing, covering
their mouths.
Yeah, exactly. And pointing, 3 or 4 girls. And those are the ones
Let's bring in Harry Litman. Harry, you're a former top federal prosecutor. You led the Western District of Pennsylvania, DOJ. You were a top official over at Maine Justice. I want to get your reaction first to Congress saying we're not giving you immunity, Ghislaine Maxwell. Like you don't make demands to us. That was the right move, in my opinion. I want to hear from you. But then, based on your experience, what the Trump regime did when they gave her immunity.
Yeah. So it was the right move. You'd expect to remember, and this is a Republican committee. But her lawyer's quote unquote demands was just a kind of just maneuver to basically say no. There's no way, whatever you would think about immunity, there's no way that they could give her the questions in advance. That you don't give that to any witness. And 2, there's no way a habeas corpus motion that she's about to file, could take years. So it really was her way of saying, I'm not going to do it, but I'll put on conditions so that it'll make me seem. And I think they understand that that's the case. But we have this really weird dynamic because normally, no witness could be cheeky enough to say, I'll talk to you if you give me the questions in advance and the like. But their remedy, of course, is contempt. And that requires a filing to the Department of Justice and the Department of Justice's decision. And even if it's totally meritorious because she's refusing to comply and cooperate, it'll be a political decision in what serves Donald Trump's interests, whether they would go forward. But it really is getting, at this point, such a web they weave of, and if she is there, it's going to be, they have also asked, the Senate said, we want the transcript of your communications with the deputy last week. Is there a transcript? Was he there alone? It would be crazy if there weren't. But, if he's trying to just protect Trump and that's all he's thinking about, he wants to be maybe able to keep it close. She is going to have to talk to them in one form or another. And it just in general, the effort for her, you're right. She's had a kind of a soft landing with Blanche and that 2-day meeting because they're hoping to get stuff from her, keep her, on their side. But I don't think that's how Congress is going to be, in part because I think Congress doesn't think that's how the American people are going to be. But what a weird dynamic here, because it's going to be potentially a divide, which we haven't had between what a Congressional Oversight Committee wants to do and what the White House wants it to do, and whether the Department of Justice will greenlight a contempt. And the whole thing is just a unbelievable mess. And then of course she has to worry about, let's say they really are zeroing in on Trump. Does she lie? And there's no immunity from perjury. So it's a precarious situation for her, and doesn't matter who asks the questions, Democrats, Republicans, and the like. So the whole thing is just an incredible mess of politics and law. But the one thing is, I'm not surprised, and is the right thing to say, go take a hike and here's the subpoena. But we have seen people get away with various levels of resistance over the last few years. And if the word comes down, kind of whisper from Blanche, just don't do it and we'll take care of you. That then we'd be really in a stalemate and unlikely to learn anything.
Yeah, it seems like the whisper, by the very nature of the meeting, has already gone down. The fact that they gave her immunity. To your point, let's play it out. She invokes her Fifth Amendment rights, or she obstructs the congressional deposition. They refer to the DOJ. The DOJ says, we've found her cooperative.
Well, first, they give her immunity. If she invokes her Fifth Amendment, they'll say, all right, fine, here's immunity. Now talk. They would do, yeah.
And then she obstructs, and then there's a referral. She'll probably feel, I'm protected by the DOJ. And based on these demands, and knowing her lawyers is I don't like that he represents her, but he's a criminal defense lawyer. That's what criminal defense lawyers do. He's known as being a good lawyer in the community. I would think that he's thought that piece through, and also representing his client. The more entanglements that make this deeply problematic for Trump, the better it is actually for her in a way, because, let's say she invokes the Fifth and she isn't given immunity. Yeah. The level of backlash that then will bring on Trump. Wait a minute. So she's speaking with your former criminal defense attorney and answered questions there and spoke for 10 hours, but now she's invoking with Congress. That doesn't pass the smell test. And so now, we reported how earlier Donald Trump, when he was on Air Force One, is now admitting that he was aware that Epstein would get underage girls from Mar-a-Lago Spa. Trump said that. So Trump keeps on burying himself with this. And in many cases, I don't know if what's in the files is what Wolf is speaking about, although if a subpoena was issued at a house and stuff was in a safe, one would expect that would be swept up in any type of but I would be speculating. I don't know. But in many ways, the contemporaneous record that Donald Trump is currently creating for himself by being shoulder to shoulder with Ghislaine, dangling pardons, referencing what happened in 2000 with Virginia Giuffre and how Epstein took his help to then be sex trafficked. But then Donald Trump in 2002 said Epstein's a great guy, who likes women on the younger side. At some point, this is building in a way that Trump's making every wrong move, and Ghislaine sits back and she's got the cards against the president of the United States, which is why you're compromised.
That's it exactly. You're really, I think that's really it. And a lot of people miss that. The worse it gets for Trump, the more powerful position Ghislaine Maxwell is in. She's the one person who could potentially save him by coming out with some kind of sanitized version of everything. It's either that or an avalanche of stuff against him. Of course, if she does, right? Man, oh man, the drip of this stuff. We now have Epstein's ex-girlfriend saying thick as thieves. We have a former victim. We have Epstein's brother. This stuff, I don't know what's going to happen to it, the pictures, but that's right. You got to imagine they would still be in the estate. She might know if they're still in the estate. So it almost gets to be a desperate thing that only she can not just save him, but give him some shot at a counter narrative, and that means that they really, and she knows they really need her. Remember, his lawyer, Blanche is his lawyer, and her lawyer. They're thick as thieves, you could say. They're very good buddies, and they may be looking to her, depending on how bad the stuff is there. And we played on different tape. Bondi saying we're going to come out with it, and all of a sudden saying never mind. I think that she had to have got the command from on high. We don't want to be coming out with this. It may be that they're really relying quite a bit on Maxwell, and they, on the one hand, want her to come out and say what they wanted to say. On the other hand, they can tell her they won't prosecute her for contempt, but the worse it gets for him, the more powerful she gets, although also the less credible she gets if she's, so obvious, if she's A, alone, and B, so obviously looking to maneuver for some kind of deal or even
it's a strange observation that I have here, Harry, but in many ways, how Donald Trump shakes down universities and media companies, where once he takes a little bit from you, then he takes more from you, and he sees that. Yeah. Remember, Donald Trump's crew were the Epsteins and the Ghislaines and the gangsters and people like that who he hung out with back in the day. And it's interesting to see this convicted sex trafficker kind of utilizing those tactics in a Tallahassee prison and being able to make the president of the United States bend. And as I've said, send government officials to see her and grant her immunity quicker than Trump sent FEMA to Texas to deal with the floods. And she realizes that she's got
the deputy AG, right?
And the deputy AG, other than the AG, but in many ways, the deputy AG as the operational person is in many ways even more powerful than the AG. And it's Trump's criminal defense attorney. And she sits there, and David Oscar Marcus, her lawyer, who's again, a good lawyer representing a horrible person, he knows exactly what he's doing. And the president is and I just think if Ghislaine Maxwell's doing this, what do you think Putin's doing? What do you think? How do you think this looks on the world stage? What do you think Iran?
Well, look, this is really true. I mean, this isn't trivial. One of the points that Democrats have made. Look, we want a counterintelligence analysis of the risks here, because somebody has copies of those pictures. Imagine the harm they could do to the United States, right? So this is. This mess is just, the tentacles of it are growing and proliferating, right? And it's going to stay that way.
There would be very easy ways to deal with this if you were not culpable.
Yeah.
There's very easy explanations if you didn't do it. But if you did do it, you can see how you can get contorted into this mess and in this web of worlds, and the lies conflicting with other lies. And so we'll leave it at that. We covered this topic thoroughly. Congress is doing the right thing. The Republican-led oversight. You do not give convicted sex traffickers who have shown zero remorse with a penchant for lying immunity and exalt them. Why? Because they do what's already happening here. You reject it. You let the chips fall where they are. If she invokes her fifth, then you consider immunity. But her other terms are untenable. You don't get the questions in advance. What are you talking about? The questions in advance. Who do you think you are? You think that you're like a former vice president? You're a convicted sex trafficker. It's wild. Anyway, everybody subscribe. Pence probably didn't get the questions in advance when he spoke to the DOJ. She's negotiating a better deal than Pence probably get. What are we talking about? Anyway, subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube, his podcast, and his Substack. They're all called Talking Feds. So you see the search bar up in YouTube. After this video ends, search Talking Feds and learn from Harry, clerk for 2 Supreme Court justices, top federal prosecutor from Pennsylvania, top federal prosecutor for Maine justice. You can learn a few things the way I do from him. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.